So, welcome back, beautiful humans. Thomas Coopman is going to talk to you about 404 model not found. This will be a live coding session. Have fun.
Thank you. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. So we're doing a live coding. Anything can happen. Just be prepared for that. Like I've prepped this a few times, but I don't know how fast or how slow I need to go for you, so that you understand it. It's not that complicated. It's something easy. Don't worry. So who am I? Thomas Coopman. I'm a consultant at Aardling. Matthias did already an introduction about Aardling today, so I'm not going to spend any more time on it so that we can do the actual live coding and not too much slides. Yeah, these are two links, but if people want to follow on the Miro board, like I'm not going to use the Miro board a lot, but if you feel like, yeah, we want to interact in some way, or we want to look at the domain again, because the domain is going to be on here, yeah, just grab that screen, that QR code, and then I'll leave it on here for like 1 more minute. After that, you're going to find out on your own. Okay. During the live coding, you can always like interrupt, give suggestions, ask questions. Let me know if I go too fast or too slow on something. That's all fine. You don't need to wait with your questions until after the session. I know a lot of you will probably do that still, but if you want to do it during the session, that's okay. So on the Miro board, I created 2 bigger slides, one with questions and remarks, and one with like, what would be your next refactoring steps? Because we're doing live coding, we're doing refactoring. There is not like one correct solution or something. I'm going to just present you one of my possible solutions to a problem. It's totally fine for you to say, hey, I would do this, or I would do this in a different way. Also, if people see questions coming up, others are free to react to that, of course, as well. Okay, so let's jump in. What is the problem we're going to solve, model, work on? It's some software for a recycling center. Some people here in the room, we already know the domain because we had an exercise on something different this morning where I also presented it. But in Belgium, a recycling center, or some of them work in a particular way. We have this thing here, it's a weighbridge where you can drive on with your car. It weighs how much the car weighs. Yeah, like this, a car with some garbage waste in as well. And when you enter, you first have to scan your electronic ID. Yeah, it's just a personal identification card that we all have in Belgium. So you scan it. The thing checks if you're allowed to go into here, because like in Belgium, if you live in a city, you're allowed to like go to 3 or 4 other recycling centers near your town, but you cannot go to like the other side of the country because there are different pricing rules and so on. So you're only allowed in a certain amount. So it checks if you're allowed in. If you're allowed in, you drive with your car on a weighbridge, and there is an operator that asks you, hey, what are you going to deliver? And here, well, it's a very small one. I only can deliver green waste or construction material. So I say, okay, I'm delivering construction material. I'm driving off here. I deliver, and I come back on the weighbridge, and the operator says, it sees again what is the weight of the car, and it asks, are you ready, or do you want to drop some more? I say, I want to drop some more. I drop my green waste. I go again. Again, they ask, okay, are you ready? If you're ready, you say yes, and then you drive to the exit. There is another scanner here. You put in your personal ID, your EID again, and then it asks you, okay, this is the amount you need to pay. You pay it, and you're free to leave. That's it. Simple enough. So if we really quickly look at that domain in terms of events, it looks like this. We scanned our EID, the access is allowed, the entrance gate opened. We have an initial wait that was submissioned. Every different kind of waste, we call them fractions. So a fraction to deliver was selected by the operator. A new weight was submitted. A new fraction to deliver was selected. A new weight was submitted. It's marked as done. A price was calculated. We scanned the electronic ID at the exit gate. We made a payment and the exit gate opened. Yeah. I'm going to skip the legend for here. This is how that system would look like if we go into a bit more detail. I'm not going to zoom into that part, but it's basically, you can see all the orange stickies so the domain events with some commands in between. So the blue ones are commands. So the black ones are black boxes. We don't care about that. That's another system. We don't care, so we mark that as a black box. The pink ones, the red pinkish ones, those are constraints or rules. So for example, here, there is an always constraint that just says every time the entrance gate is opened, we're also going to translate that event in a resident entered. Yeah. And then we have the app on there with the lines that shows to what commands a button goes. The different kind of colors are like different services, different components in our application. And this is the one we're actually interested in for today. So if everything is delivered, we're going to send the command calculate price, and we want to get the price. Price was calculated. And there are price calculation rules. We're not saying yet what the price calculation rules are. We're going to look at that in a second. And then this is what happens at the end. That's something, if you like, you can look at it at a later time. Now, what are the rules? I've created 9 examples in a style of given, when, then. And I've already translated those into code. We're going to see them in a second. But basically, yeah, when you're not dropping anything at all, so the delivery was completed, it's empty. When we calculate the price for KC, the price should be 0. Simple enough. Then the next one, we now have, again, KC, and we say construction waste costs 10 cents per kilo. She drops 200 kilos, the price is 20. Similar one, but now we've got Aiden, who lives in Pineville, and there is an exemption rule, meaning they got a free bit. They can deliver some bits for free. So the exemption for Pineville says you are allowed every year to drop 100 kilos for free. So same thing, we drop 200, but we only need to pay for 100 because we got 100 for free. Similar, same situation, but now we have 3 deliveries. So those are 3 different dates. For the last one, we need to pay 7.5 because, yeah, we already dropped 75 kilos in the past. So we only have 25 kilos free for our last visit. So 100 minus 25 is 75 kilos, is 7.5 euros to pay. This is a similar example, but our complete, so example 5, the complete exemption was already used. So for this one, we just need to pay the full price. This one, if we don't need to, like it can be that our exemption makes it so that we don't have to pay anything because we haven't dropped anything in the past. We can also have multiple types. So we only have the exemption on construction waste. We don't have it on green waste. Yeah. And then here we can see that's an example if we go back a year. this doesn't count for our exemption, only this counts. So we need to pay 5. And this is our last example. We get an exemption not per person, but per household, per address where you live. So I have 2 people, John and Aidan, living on the same address. The exemption calculates the total of both. Yeah? Now, so you have to imagine we already built this in a prototype kind of way, but now we had we were happy with the prototype, but domain experts say we need to change some things, and as developers we're also not that happy. We say first of all, exemption rules, they impact the weight. That's a kind of exemption rules. They will always apply to a city and a fraction type, but we like to create our rules and make them configurable. Like it should be easy to add new kinds of exemptions, remove ones, change existing ones. Price calculation, that's always based on weight and fraction type. Different prices per city are possible. So it's possible that 2 people from different cities go to one recycling center and have to pay a different price. And again, we'd like to configure different price rules. And normally all rules should apply for a calendar year, but they also said this might change. We'll see. Yeah?
So you said that the exemption rules would change, should be configurable because it would change.
Yeah.
Could they, is there a change considered an event?
We could model it like that. We haven't done it, but they should be per calendar year. So we could have an event that says from the 1st of January next year, this is the new rule. We're not going to go that deep. In a live coding, I cannot go that deep, so I focus on one small part of the system, and we're going to try to look at that. So I'm very quickly going to show the one test, but you're going to see it's just we have Casey who visits. We don't register anything, and the price should be 0. Yeah, and like this we have the 9 examples. So I showed you them. These are all the examples. I'm not going to go back to the test just for to go a little bit faster with the code. Not all the live coding it's all backed by tests, but I might take some things a little bit faster than I would normally do, again for demonstration purposes. So we have maybe let's first look at it. So we have a domain layer there, and from a first point, if you just look at the outside, it actually looks okay. Eh? We have probably some value objects like address. A household might be an entity or a value object. I don't care that much right now if they're value object or entities, but we see already some of the domain language or the built ubiquitous language in there. So you might say, hey, this is looking okay already, at least from the outside. We also have something, it's called price calculation service. So it seems that we have decent code already, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing. What I am going to try to show you is that we can take some things to a next level, and I'm not saying we should always do that, but we definitely should know that we can do it, and we should consider it sometimes, because it allows us to improve certain things based on the kind of rules we have, or the how we have to evolve a system. Now, if I look at the price calculation service and the calculate one, well, first of all, you see we have the price per type. It's hard-coded in there. That's not really nice. Then we're starting to ask, hey, what are the what is the household for this visitor ID? Remember, it's we're paying per household. Then we're asking the deliveries of the current year. And then we're doing some complex things like we're going to sort the deliveries per fraction type. And then from line 33 to 43, that's where we're actually doing the calculation. We also have a calculate fraction. So this calculates the price for one type, for example, for construction or for green waste. And you can also see our exemption rule is hard-coded in there. Again, not something we'd really like. The first thing I notice in this kind of code is that we call this thing a service. And if we're looking at tactical objects and domain-driven design, and if we're talking about rich domain models, this amount of complexity and logic in a service is something I'd rather not have. I'd rather move my complexity, my behavior to domain objects that should hold them. Yeah, so that's what I want to refactor towards. Okay, so well, let's get rid of these two warnings. It says that these things are not changed, so I can use const. Every time I save, the tests will run. So as long as the tests are green, we should be okay. Yeah? So the first thing here, this last line, that's our actual price calculation. It's hidden a little bit. We cannot have a price below 0. I'm not sure how we would get to such a price, but it's in there, so I'm going to leave it, but I'm going to extract that into a function calculate price, and I need to pass in the weight, that's a number, and the price, that's a number. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, hey, why are weight and price numbers and not value objects? I totally agree. That's a refactoring that we should do, and we probably will at some point, but we won't have time in this session. But it's definitely something that we also should do. So for now, they're going to be just numbers. And I'm going to just duplicate that, change the last weight to weight, and then we can change this to this.calculate price, and our test should still be green. Oh, they're already red. Why are they red? Say a line number.
67. You should replace multiplication sign with this comma because you
Ah, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. You're all awake. That's great. Yeah. Okay. So that is one thing. Normally, at this point, I would already commit. I'm not going to do that right now. The repository is also online, and you're going to see there are two branches, tryout 1 and tryout 2, which have decent commits. Not great, but decent commits. So if you want to look back at what I've done, you can do that commit by commit. Okay? So the next thing, this whole thing is calculating the fractions. So I'm going to also extract that. The thing that's not a DDD, but just regular object-oriented, one of the nice things is let's try to keep everything at the same level of abstraction in a function. I'm not always doing that, but I try to aim for that. Now in this function, we're doing completely different. We have calculations and then also just combining certain things. So what I want to do is make this function only about combining certain stuff and not about calculation. So I'm going to introduce private calculate exemption. I'm not going to pass any parameters in. So I know a language like Java and C# have better refactoring tools that would make this easier. I'm doing TypeScript just because. I don't know why I picked TypeScript. maybe to show that it's possible. I'm just going to duplicate everything in here. And now it's going to complain to me what I don't have. And that's how I'm going to fix the function. So you'll see, let's start on the top. We have the deliveries. So the deliveries is and now is my limited amount of screen state a little bit harder because I think it's delivery array. I'm going to need to import it. It's delivered fraction. So let's rename it already. Delivered. Well, we'll rename it in a second. So that's one thing I need, and I also need the type and the city. Now I'm passing in. In the previous I had the city on the household. I don't actually need the household in here, so I only want to put in the city as a parameter. So the city is a string, again, should be probably some other value object, and the type is a string as well. So if I paste this in, I didn't do anything yet, but it compiles. And now I can say that my const weight equals this.calculate exemption. The first thing we want to pass in is the city, the second thing is the type, and the third thing are the deliveries. And now if I change this, it's not happy yet. I'm not returning anything here, of course. So return last weight. And now it is happy, and it should say, yeah, this is now not used anymore. It's calculating the exemption, but that's a good point, and that might be something we want to make explicit at some point. The exemption rule basically says you put in a weight, and it's going to return you, this is the actual weight that you have to pay for. So it subtracts the exemption. Now, again, and that's maybe something we could put on the Miro, like maybe at some point we need to make exemption like a value object so that we can pass in weight and get an exemption back and then calculate the price on the exemption and not on the actual weight. Now that's again not something we're going to get to, but it's definitely something that would make sense. Yeah. For now, the exemption is always going to return the weight. Yeah. So now we can see our calculate fraction function is a lot simpler, and it's really clear that we're applying two things. We're first calculating the exemption, which gets back a weight, and then we can calculate the price on the weight and that price. Yeah. Our two functions underneath are still in a maybe bad shape, well, probably a bad shape. They're not what we want to end up with, but we've started to clean some things up. Now, the calculate fraction function is not doing a lot, and that's okay. But here, I want to make some things more explicit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the calculate fraction function, and I'm going to put these two lines inside here. So where I call it, I'm going to move them up again. Why do I do that, and why don't I keep them there? Because I did this exercise already a few times, so I already know how I'm moving forward, of course. But also sometimes by moving things back in, it makes it more explicit what this is actually doing, that it's two different steps. And now it still feels like, hey, I'm hiding some things that I want to actually refactor. These are the things that I'm, the calculate exemption and the calculate price, those are the things that I'm thinking about. And they feel kind of hidden in the calculate fraction function. So I'm just going to move these up. I'm pasting them, and now The only thing I need to change here is that the deliveries is like that, and then we can remove this, and our test should still be okay. And now calculate fraction, it should have been a private function, I forgot about it, but I can remove it. Did this improve things? Not necessarily, just a step in between I want to make. Okay, so well, right now we're still not in a place that we want to be. We still have, yeah, it's not that much better. Remember, we said we want to have configurable rules. How are we going to get there? That's one of the things I want to try to solve. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the calculate price. I'm going to create a price calculation. Now I forgot how I named it before. I know I did call it price calculation. It feels kind of weird right now. I'm not sure why. And I'm going to put, I'm just going to put that one on here. So I'm just extracting the price calculation rule into a separate object. Okay, nothing more so far. Of course, this cannot be private, and it should calculate. We don't use it so far. Let's fix that. That's just new price calculation dot calculate should still be the same. Okay, going to do the same for the weight exemption. So I'm going to call that weight exemption. And I have a calculate. Well, we can just copy it over, of course. So calculate. And it's not going to do anything yet, of course, but I just check if it compiles. And then I can, here I say new weight exemption, and we rename this to calculate, and then it should still work, and I can remove these two private functions. Okay, now I think we're in a decent place to start making them configurable. Okay, so I extracted them as objects. You see in line 15 to 17, that's where we define the price. How do we define the price? We define the price via the fraction type. Okay, so my price calculation, what I want to do right here, I'm giving, I say, hey, this is the weight and the price. I don't want to put the actual price in my calculate. I want my rule to contain the price. Okay? Shouldn't the price,
like we said in the beginning, that the price is basically driven by the region.
the region, the city, you mean? Probably, but we don't have that yet. We're going to make it so that it's possible to apply it in such a way, but it's at this point not yet. Okay, but it's good. That kind of refactor should be trivial at the end. Okay, so. How am I going to do extracting the price? Yeah, with a constructor, of course, and I say this dot price equals price, and I need to declare that private. If someone knows how to make it immediately read only, would like to know that. I always need to type it. I remove the price from here, and I do this dot price. And now it's broken, of course, because in here I need to enter my price. And here I need to remove it. Okay, still works. So we have a configurable price calculation rule at this point, but we don't use it yet. So what am I going to do? I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to call it 2. So we don't have a conflict in the name. And I'm going to say this thing. So here, that between brackets, that's the type annotation. It says the key is a string, so construction and green waste, those are strings. And the return argument is a number. I don't want to return numbers now. I want to return price calculation rules. Okay, so and here I say new price calculation, and I don't know why, yeah, like this. And here as well, price calculation. Okay, that compiles, we don't use it yet, but now we can do something trivial. We can say we're going to change this to, how was it called? Price per type 2 with, I get the type out of it, and new expression, I forgot, no, I have a new. Sorry, yeah, thank you, yeah. Okay, so now I did this, I see I have an unused one that I...
What's the question, what's the exclamation mark for?
The exclamation mark is because we don't, yeah, it's possible that we get null or undefined. I'm ignoring that. The exclamation mark says I always get something. Yeah, I can model it better in TypeScript. Like I could say these are all the construction and waste. These are all the different kinds of fractions I have, and I model it in such a way that I can only use those, and then you would not have to use it. But now my key is a string, so if I put like not construction or green waste, but I say I have wood as a garbage type, then it would break. But I'm completely ignoring that.
Sometimes you can see as a type instead of exclamation.
Yeah, that's like a shortcut for that. Okay, now I can remove that one, and I can rename this one to price per type. Okay, so that's this kind of object we did. Now I received the remark that I don't have that much time anymore, but we still have some time. Yeah? Well, let's just continue. So same thing happens for the weight exemption. So here we have the city and the type in our constructor. Well, we want to have a weight exemption we want to have that. So what do I need to get in the constructor is a city, the type, and the actual exemption that we are going to reduce. Here you can see it everywhere it says 100, that's the actual exemption. It's completely hidden in there. Let's make it explicit. Okay? So we have the city, the type, and the exemption. Okay, I need to add all missing. Now it doesn't even make them private and read-only. I have no idea why it doesn't do that every time. Okay, and now I can use them. So here I say this dot city. I'm going to this dot type, and everywhere there is 100, I am saying this dot exemption. Okay, and now I need to, of course, change my weight exemption for that as well. So the first argument was the city. The second one is the construction. Yes, thank you. And my exemption was 100. Okay, everything is still okay. So now we can do the same thing as we did with the price calculation. Let's create those rules. So just as a, we're still hard coding them. Yeah, but now you can see already the pattern, what we can do. Hey, we have, for example, we have the whole household repository. Why not have a price calculation rules repository? Why not have a weight exemption rules repository? Yeah? In that sense, we can push them out, we can create them wherever we want, save them in our repository and use them here instead of hard-coded. Okay? So I'm going to just duplicate this whole thing. Whoops. I'm going to call them weight exemption rules because that's actually a better name for price per type as well. And here I'm returning weight exemption. Now we're going to see that we have some issue. Because this next one doesn't make any sense. Weight exemption. I have no exemption here. So I'm going to solve it like this and see if it works. But it kind of feels, well, definitely ugly. Oops. Yeah, there it was already. So weight exemption rules for the type with an exclamation mark. Okay, so that works. But what my thing is, this is definitely ugly. Yeah? We have a weight exemption where we say if it doesn't fit the city, if it doesn't fit the type, we just do no exemption. I'd rather make that explicit. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I make a new class. I say, I first going to rename this one. I'm going to rename this one weight exemption per fraction and city. So I'm very explicit. I have an exemption that needs both a fraction and a city. And now I'm going to make a new one and I'm going to call it no exemption. And I'm going to copy the constructor, copy the calculate for now. So the constructor, yeah, I should have copied the these as well. I don't care about the city, I don't care about the type. I just want to return the last weight. So I'm just, I just want to return this. And now that I see it, I don't actually need these in the constructor, so I'm going to remove my constructor again. Okay, so now I can change this to say, okay, this one is actually a no exemption. But of course, TypeScript is going to complain that the weight exemption per fraction and city and the no exemption are not the same kind of objects that I put in here. It's expecting a weight exemption per fraction and city, so I'm going to need to introduce an interface. And I'm going to call this weight exemption. And it has a calculate that I can copy from here. So it has a calculate that says it returns a number. And now we can say implements weight exemption, implements weight exemption, and we can change this one to say we need that one, and we're there. Okay, still with me? No, you're free. Like I am not able to get where I want to get. So, well.
I'm just curious about differences in constructor to implementation of the same interface, which is, I'm not sure if it's a good idea or not really.
Oh, okay. That's a technical discussion we can take. No, I have no strong opinions. I like in a more functional language, I would not create a constructor. I would say I expect this type of function, and I can do this in TypeScript as well. But then I think I'm like yeah, Yeah, we can see okay, let's rename the price per type because that's a sucky name. So these are the price calculation rules. So basically now the only thing to make them really configurable is extract them, put them into a repository, and then people can add new rules. Oh, I agree. There is some kind of issue if we're saying, hey, this rule should only start to apply from the start of next year, and that's something we could solve in a different way. It's out of scope. All the code is available, so if you want to do it as an exercise, you definitely can. Now it's starting to look better here, but it's still we still have this thing that that I don't like. Yeah, that's still too much code. So what I am okay with, like if my service says I'm calling repositories to get domain objects, and then I call those domain objects to do things. I'd rather not have my service do so many things. So this is something I want to reduce or remove. So, and what I'm going to, what I can introduce for that is also a new class. Yeah, I'm creating all my classes in the same file just for convenience, of course. So I can create a new class, and maybe this one is called delivery calculation, not service, but really delivery calculation. And it needs a calculate method. It's going to need some parameters. But what I'm going to do is move this whole thing in there. Not the whole thing, sorry, but this whole thing that I don't like. That's the thing I don't like. I'm going to copy that in there in my calculate, and then I see what kind of parameters I need. So I need the delivery, I need the weight exemption rules, I need the city, and I need the price calculation rules. So let's make it explicit. Let's first do this as a first step. So this, the city, the weight exemption rules. I'm going to do something ugly for a second, but that's for time constraints. And I need the delivery, deliveries, and I think they're delivered fractions. I don't remember. Or are they? No, here they are deliveries. So that's also something we need to fix in our model, but we don't have time. And here I don't want to use the household, but the city. Okay, so I created this object, and now I can just say return new delivery calculations with the household city, the weight exemption rules, sorry, it doesn't. No, you're correct. It doesn't have. I need to call calculate on it. Yep. The weight exemption rules, the price calculation rules, and what did I forgot? The deliveries. And if I do like this, did I put a return in front of it? Yes. I'm going to delete that, and everything is still okay. So the reason I said I'm going to put any is I didn't want to type this. I should extract that as a separate type, but I'm going to keep any in there. That's not part of the exercise. So my service now looks clean enough. Maybe there are still some things we can improve, but this is what I'd like to see at some point. We're line 15 until 28, that's calling the repository. Line 29 is also a repository, so we're collecting some domain objects. Line 30, not sure if that should be in there. That's probably something we want to refactor, but then we create a new domain object and we call calculate on it. Okay, you could say, well, you just moved this complexity into another object. You're completely right about that. So we should also try to improve this situation a little bit here. Well, that's not something I can do in 5 minutes. So I'm going to I would like to first start the discussion and end the exercise here. You can see how I refactored that one. It's a more technical one. I can maybe, let me just show the code. I should have it open somewhere. Well, basically, I changed it to this. It still has some technicalities here. We should do better than this. But what we're saying, all fraction types. What is instead of instead of this line 47 until 58 where I order things per type, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm saying I'm just going to loop over all the types for the current delivery, and then I first call the exemption rules. I calculate the weight. I get the weight, and then I say I'm going to do the price rules, and I calculate the price rules for that weight. And I have a reduce or a fold. So basically, I loop over all my fraction types, and I update my price every time. Yeah. So that's one example. I need to push. And that one doesn't exist. That's something. In my main branch, you'll see that it's different. I don't know where I put it. I'm not sure if I did it in a different way. But here you can see, I did it a little bit different. Here I have the repository. I say find the exemption rule, find a calculation rule. And what you're also going to see is that I introduced value objects for price, for example. So instead of duplicating on my price, I can say, hey, give me the total of all these prices, for examples. And I do similar things for weight and so on. Okay? Any questions, remarks, whatsoever? Again, if you feel like you want to do this yourself, that's the Miro board, and on the Miro board, the link with the GitHub is available. So play with it, have a look. I don't know which one you want. Do you want the QR code or the other one? But yeah, so question, remarks. Do you think like, hey, I like the kind of style you're going in, or are you saying, well, that's total overhead for what we're doing? Yeah?
Can you go back to the no exemption?
Pass it over, please.
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, can I go back to the no exemption rule? Sure.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Next one.
Yeah.
There you have this calculate function which now has a city, type, and so on, but it's doing nothing with it. Usually, I would not implement such an implementation of an interface because from the outside it looks like it does something with city and type, but it does not. How would you solve such a thing?
Well, that is like for me. I agree. At some point, it's probably something you would not want. Here, I might be able to fix it with some kinds of more advanced types and not generated, but like higher level functions. But I'm not sure if I want to add that kind of complexity. But I could have like I am fairly certain that I can convince the TypeScript compiler to find, like I could find a way where I have a calculate where I only put the deliveries in and do nothing else, but I'm not sure I want to put that kind of effort into it. The other possibility is that you have like a kind of fallback where you say, if I haven't defined any rules, I assume that nothing has to happen with it. If you can make that fallback explicit, that would be okay for me as well. The thing here, what I mostly like is if I read it from the outside, like, no, for someone who has to configure the system, it's really clear I put no exemptions here. And I just want to make that explicit first. You definitely have a point. If you're looking at the code, it feels kind of strange that there are unused parameters. That would be like the second thing I would optimize for, not the first. One last, because we need to round up.
So I would say it adds a lot of boilerplate code for,
true. For this simple example, it adds lots of boilerplate. But if you have a real system and you need to maintain it over a long period of time, and you have those actual rules, in my experience, this offers lots of advantages versus having services with lots of complexity in them. Again, it's just one way. I refactored this towards something I think speaks the language more. It's totally not perfect. Every time I iterate over it, I say, okay, this should probably get a different name. I should have renamed this differently. But of course, I need to end somewhere. But the advantage here, like the configurable rules and making that very explicit, is something that, in my opinion, helps a lot. Yeah? I don't know what the question. So you're asking, can I solve? We're out of time. So if you have like more suggestions, you're free to make a pull request or to comment on the Miro board, and then people can put an idea, or you can come to me. I'm walking around here definitely today, probably also tomorrow as well. Depends on my kids how much they liked today. But no, they went to the zoo, so it should be okay. Okay? Thank you all, and see you around.